That's right. I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
You can't stop me.
I'm going to win.
It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
I won't quit. I'll just keep getting stronger.
Stronger?
Stronger.
We used to talk about how like no one gets big anymore, but since I'm down about 25 pounds, and I think Dean's down about 30, I don't know if we can keep doing that.
Well, I think we're just gonna roll with that. That's actually the intro. It already started. That's how it started. We're liars and
I mean, I found the weight that you guys lost. I just got really, really fat this year, so it's been awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I intentionally got as fat as possible, and then I was like, okay, now I need to like. Because I thought beaches were going to be closed all summer. So I was like, I'm just going to keep bulking. And then beaches opened in New York. I was like, fuck.
Shit, gotta go.
When I got back, I came back from Costa Rica and I ate the same calories as before, but my output went from normal to like, went straight into like quarantine. And I stopped moving and like got up to like 215 kind of quick, which is like the most I've ever weighed in at.
Yeah.
And,
I went the opposite way.
It was uncomfortable. It was real. Yeah. And I'm not built to be a big guy. Like it's not fun when I get too heavy.
So we should introduce you officially. So like you've already, this is Matt Domney. We're all
guys.
friends. Have you and Jeb actually met?
No, we've never actually met or talked on a podcast before.
No.
I just DM'd him back and forth on Instagram. He usually leaves me on scene.
You guys seem like you know each other. That's like hilarious.
We DM quite a bit.
We DM a bit, and then he always leaves me on scene at the end of the day. I'm like, oh, wow, cool, Jeb. Thanks. I guess we're not really that close friends. But
that's just shows the state of how people interact now. It's like, oh, I knew him from Instagram. I think that's how we first met. It's like, oh, hey, buddy. Like, are we actually
Dean, we met on Instagram. Yeah.
We're not actually buddies, but we like the same stuff. Just reintroduce yourself because like this ends up being a second iteration. We call it the pump now.
Okay,
it's
nice.
not, what was it before? Barbell Meat Search, and we just talked shit last time, and people liked it. We talked about trap bar stuff, but I don't know. Redo the introduction because things have changed in your world from last time.
Yeah, so the stuff has changed a little bit from last time. So I'm Matt Domney. Nice to meet you guys. I am the head coach at Compound Performance. I also work with Kyle Dobbs for the group mentorship and any continuing education product that we have through there. We're going to be launching a couple new ones soon that I'm pretty excited about. Can't say much about them, but we've got a couple big things coming in October. So keep your eyes out for what's going on then.
Well, and you were supposed to start a podcast. It never happened. So I was like, fuck you guys.
Dude, we got there's a lot of stuff going on. And it's by saying there's a lot of stuff going on, I mean, like, basically we're really not doing anything. And I'm just blaming time management skills and like our poor time management skills on why we haven't done this yet. But it's going to come eventually. Nobody actually likes us. So we wouldn't have anybody on the podcast anyway.
It ends up being more of a comedy show. Cause like, I think that most of your relationships with people is just talking shit about them.
I mean, if you look at like most of the relationships on social media, it's just mostly people talking shit about me. It's like, that's all it is. It's
you
like,
do tend to catch an unnatural amount of shit just across the board.
I catch an obscene amount of flack from so like, okay, here's how it all started. Like Kyle was on a podcast a little while ago and like back in like January, February, and he called me, like he got asked like what like potato, like what thing we all were. And he said that I looked like Mr. Potato Head from Toy Story. He's like, he's got this like fat body and these like tiny skinny arms. And he's like weak and small. And now every single person on social media thinks I'm like 5'6", 165. It's amazing. So like we got
you're big. First of all,
I'm 6'3", 250. Yeah. Like everybody thinks I'm 5'6", 165. So like I get people that'll like, I'll post a story of like me benching 315 and people will like comment and be like, yo, you actually look like kind of big here. Aren't you like small? I was like, dude, no, like I'm a lot bigger than you are.
I just assumed it was because you were stupid. Like I
that's
thought it was
also
just, like,
true.
No, I like it's just the thought like Kyle likes to just make everyone feel stupid. So I was like, maybe he's just like trying to breed you to be like think you're stupid.
No, like, that's just it's not like trying
potato,
to
you know, like
that I'm
potato
stupid
for the R word now, and now it's like you full potato.
But it's not like I'm trying to. He's not trying to make me think I'm stupid. He's just like reminding me that I actually am. So like
the
that's
power dynamics there
exactly
at work.
Yeah.
It's interesting because he still does it to this day. Like he messaged, I was like, I've tagged you in that surf video, and I was like, oh, look at pain free squat because I was trying to get low, and then he messaged me. He's like, yeah, super hingy. I'm like, what? Dude, I haven't even talked to you for like 3 weeks, and that's what you say? Like, fuck you.
I just want you guys to know that for the 14 minutes of airtime that Kyle Dobbs has received, he's probably going to send you an invoice after he listens to this podcast. You guys can expect a bill in the mail. That's just what he does now.
Well, he thinks I have something.
We actually mention Kyle, I think, in every episode at some point.
Well, he's going to send you guys an invoice.
We are now contractually obligated to mention Kyle at some point.
The thing is, he thinks it's like everyone's like, oh, you got something against it. I'm like, literally, he messaged me out of the blue. It's almost like he just pokes just enough to get me to mention him. I think
he's like, hey, buddy, I'm still here. Just so you know. Just remember, I'm still going.
Well, it's good marketing. It seems to be
it works.
That's the compound way, is to just poke at people.
It's exactly what it is. We poke at people, we bother people, and then people make fun of me, and that's how it is. That's how we go. That's how we grow as a company.
Who is it? Mainly Squat University, right?
We actually
mainly Squat U.
We actually talk. I actually like get into this with Ben and Jeb and I. We have like a group text, and it's just like we kind of say like, "Oh, Pat's got it right?" Like round the herd up. But Pat always says inflammatory stuff in like just bold letters, and it's just like basically "fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you," but it kind of works. Like, and then you have to have something to back up. Like you have to have a brain. But it's like I think that is a marketing strategy or even a company strategy to kind of build a reputation. Like I don't think it's wrong. I just think it's a different type of way of doing it.
Yeah, and that's just one of the things that if you're looking at social media marketing now, the thing that people try to do is they're trying to just disrupt what people normally think about, because it's, especially with social media, I think it's actually one of those things that becomes kind of, and this is going to be totally my bias, but I think it's becoming one of those things that actually is more important to do than it is not to do, because like everybody gets so stuck in their small little echo chamber, where if you don't agree with them, they just block you or mute you and they unfollow you, and then you don't talk about them anymore. So I think it's one of those things where like just trying to get out of your echo chamber and trying to do some stuff that is like, hey, here's why this is wrong. Here's why it's wrong. And here's what you can do to be better, is an easy way that you guys can like start to build a bigger following, just because like you're starting to try to take people out of that echo chamber. Because like one of the biggest things that I've talked about this multiple times with a bunch of different people, like just looking at social media in general, critical thinking is dying.
Yeah.
Because all it is all of these people are just living in this little echo chamber, and they're just hearing the same voice regurgitating the exact same information over and over and over and over and over again. And like FRC people will only talk to FRC people. PRI people will only talk to PRI people. And then they hate each other when they're trying to get to the same endpoint through different means. So it's like one of those things where if you got to start to break people out of those echo chambers and say something inflammatory that gets people to kind of think a little bit more, you're going to get a bunch of people that are going to hate you and are going to block you. But at the same time, like you can do something semi-ethical and try to remove people from that echo chamber and give them a different perspective and different opinion.
Well, I think even the people you're poking, like we make fun of Squat University, but it's like Squat University stuff. Like just I go look at the content sometimes just because like their old YouTube videos and stuff. It's like the same thing it was in 2001 around. I don't know. It seems like the same stuff we were learning on Mobility WOD.
Yeah,
like which
it's
like it hasn't evolved. It's like, so if you're that person, it's like what are you not changing, or is this the way?
Yeah, and like that's what I'm looking at with this too, is like as a coach and as somebody who's just been trying to learn more about like the human body and how the body works and programming and everything like that, I've evolved a ton from the last time that we were even on this podcast. Like I've learned a lot more stuff. I've changed my perspective a bunch of times. I've tried to figure out a lot of new things that are going to get people to the better end point. And that's what I see with a lot of these people who it's the same kind of thing we were talking about with that echo chamber. Like they just stay within that little area and they never change and they never go out. Right? Because they find a system that they identify with that's comfortable to them, and they're going to do whatever they can to retain as much as that, to stay within there as much as possible, because it gives them a feeling of comfortability and power. And the hardest thing that a lot of these people can do is sit there and say, well, I was wrong about this, because what they're going to sit like a lot of times, and like I had this go on with myself multiple times, when I would find something that was better or smarter or more correct than what I was doing through different lenses of through different research, through new things that are coming out, through new stuff that I'm learning. And like saying that you're wrong, it's like that Dunning-Kruger effect where it just brings you back into that valley of despair where you don't feel like you know anything anymore. And like, that's what I think a lot of these people are very, very scared about falling into, is that area where I don't know anything because I have 20,000 followers on social media and those people all look at me as a guru for X. And if I say I'm wrong, I lose all credibility.
Well, I think there's also that sunk cost bias thing, right? Like people
Yeah.
are like, I invested this much time and this much effort into having 18 FRC certifications or 22 PRI certifications. Like, if I question that, did I just waste all that money? When in actuality, every single thing we do brings us closer to wherever we're trying to get to. So nothing is really a waste. But yeah, I mean, I see consistently. Now, within that kind of paradigm, though, by circling the wagons, do you feel like instead of always breaking people out of their bias, are you also at risk of kind of doubling down your own quote unquote tribe?
100%. 100%. And that's one of those things where like a lot of the stuff that I try to do is like sometimes I'll post things that are like a PRI-ish or respiratory in nature, and then I'll try to do things that are very, very opposite of that, because it just gets it casts a little bit of a wider net. And like that's one of those things where if you just circle the wagon and you create the same kind of thing, it's like I made a post about this a little while ago about like tribalism versus cronyism, right?
Mhm.
And if we're looking at it as from a tribal aspect, the tribe is trying to like evolve and better themselves and all move towards the same common end goal. Whereas the cronyism and people that I see on social media, people are going to say, oh no, this guy's right because it's who he is. And like,
Yeah,
that's what I'm trying to like see if we can get people to not do, is just fall into that habit of just like fitness cronyism, where that person is right because that person is right because that person is who they are.
One of my favorites was Pat posted a whole thing about how TRXs suck, and some dude's like, yeah, man, that's why I use rings. And it was like, holy shit.
Yeah.
But I think that's a top-down thing, because you can fall risk or victim to the same thing that you're making fun of, but I think it comes with the top down, because like I said, if you're not willing to change, then that trickles down. Because I think that there's a lot of people that follow even you guys that might not be able to dissociate that from Squat University. You know what I mean? Even though it's different, it's like they can blindly follow stuff.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, you're creating a system. It's just not like it's not entrenched. I don't think you guys are cognitively entrenched. I'll tell you when you are.
We really try not to be, because it's just one of those
periods
things.
I'm sure.
Yeah, I mean, there's always going to be, and like that's what it's always going to be, is like there's always going to be times when the gears trying to get stuck, and we get stuck in that one position, and we try to have to get through that and re-lubricate the machinery and try to get through that portion.
Some lube.
But I mean, to get better and keep it going and keep the wheels turning, and like that's one of the things that I see a lot, is like that's why like when I do any kind of continuing education for myself, I try to get as far out of the lens that I normally exist in as possible, because like I don't want to just be sitting there within the same biases at all times, and just like cognitively entrenching myself even more in that same bias and that same aspect of fitness and training, when there's a lot of other stuff out there.
Well, I think it's hard for the gen, or not even gen pop, but the younger, maybe less experienced guys out there who read this stuff, because the people who are popular on social media, right? Everyone speaks in kind of absolutes because they have something to sell. And I follow, you guys, like PRI type people. I follow bodybuilders. I follow powerlifters, and all of them are 100% confident and right in every single thing they post. And technically there's probably things about every single one that are absolutely right. But I think, like you said, is if you follow just kind of one system or dive into that one system, you don't get to see that, like, hey, these dudes all get big doing totally different shit. Yeah. Like, there's clearly more than one path, and it's just about finding what is the either most efficient or is going to lessen the time of getting hurt, or what meets your goals.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And like, that's one of those things too, is like you said, with a lot of these people just fall into a system. Systems are great because they give people checklists to make sure that they're doing the right thing. And thinking critically and creating a principle-based training system or principle-based system, or like just even using your own personal training principles to find out what you want to gravitate more towards, how you want to train people, how you want to develop athletes and other humans, that's a lot more difficult. And there's a lot more a gray area than a system being just black or white, where it's like, like the thing that I always pick on is like FRC's biggest thing of like joint independence before joint interdependence, where it's like their whole thing is you have to have the ability to fully internally rotate your humerus before you can even start working on flexing it or flexing it with your elbow.
Mhm.
Well, how does that make me better at anything else?
Right.
What does that do for me? Like, okay, cool. I've now have full shoulder internal rotation. I lost 30 pounds of muscle. My bench max, I'm a power lifter. My bench max went down by 100 pounds, and like, I feel great, but like, I'm also super weak. And like, that's the thing, is it gives people these checkpoints and these systems that they can use to get to a defined endpoint that's created by that same system.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're looking at it from a principle-based thing of like, what do I want to do, and how do I want to tangibly improve my own performance or my client's performance, you can't necessarily fall within that same rigid system, because you're always going to have people that don't exist within that system.
Well, and it's different than when we train ourselves. Like
Yeah.
I know the amount of crazy of what I would do to do like a perfect squat or whatever, or learn a perfect squat or learn a new system. And like, most people don't care.
Yeah.
Like, even I had someone yesterday, and like, how I used to train, I was like, he's like, yeah, you're telling me a few different things. Like, it's the same stuff. I'm just like taking 90% of that out because it didn't matter for where you're at. Where we kind of fall into that habit of even programming, where like we need to learn something too. Like, trainers have to evolve as well, and part of that is we kind of bring everyone through that, and it's kind of cool to see the change. But I think we all go through that.
Oh, absolutely. And the best thing that we can get as coaches is the clients that are very vocal, and you start making them do some dumb shit, and they just look at you like, I'm not going to do that. That's stupid. I don't want to do that. And they're like, oh, cool. Now I got to figure out a different way to do the same thing that I want to do. And I think that's one of the best things, like the best teaching tools that a lot of coaches will get, is because it'll lead you to two definite endpoints. Number one, you're going to fire that client, and you're not going to deal with them anymore because you're being challenged, and you don't want to take that challenge and evolve and grow yourself, which is fine, because you're still going to meet other people that are going to fall. Like, there's millions of people on social media, and you will find another person that will fall within that same bias and do whatever it is that you want them to do. Or two, you take that challenge and then you learn a new thing that's going to help you get to that person and help that person evolve. And now you have another tool in your repertoire that you can use for other people, and to cast another wider net and attract more people.
Yeah, I think like as coaches, I think or at least the type of people I think we all are, is being open-minded. Is we, I'm willing to dive in and and get deep into some shit, even if I don't see an immediate return, because I'm in this for the long haul. So, whether it be, like watching Dean spend a year doing 90-pound Zercher squats to like get that thing down, like, I don't know how much of an effect it really had long term, but he was willing, right? So zero, but you were willing to spend and dedicate the time to try to do it to see if there was a return.
That's not true also, but it just you kind of learn. I don't know. I find like to really learn this stuff. Yeah, I'll take the jokes. Like, I think we all have to, but you have to also be able to do it so you can say confidently, like, this does this. Because I think that's also another issue, is like, people don't actually, like, they'll learn it, but they won't actually do it. I'll do it almost to a fault.
Yeah. Dean, you overdo.
Yeah, absolutely.
When Dean was trying to like work on that squat, I would like see him doing a 95-pound Zercher squat 7 days a week, sometimes twice a day. It's like, bro.
And then
that's my
2
problem.
hours of PRI drills in the middle of the day. Like,
well, that's why we're talking about stuff. So like how we're different from our clients. I'm kind of learning now, because I'm like, okay, I'm over it. Like, but I'm 32 years old. I'm over it after 32 years. But it's like, now I need to learn other stuff and just have someone else structure it. So we're talking about BJJ, and like, I've been doing surfing and stuff, something that's not in my wheelhouse, because I need to like break that cycle, because that's also not helpful. But that, for some people and some coaches, I think that trickles into their practice, and
absolutely
a bunch of psychos. And like, I know I'm a psycho, so I've internalized it. Like, I know it. I just try not to do that with other people. So it's good. Just don't do what I did, but kind of do some of it.
But do a little bit of it. But like, that's the thing too, is like, you have to get through that point to be able to get to where you are now. And it's like, that's a different path for everybody. And that's going to take a different length, like a different amount of time for every single person to get through the point where it's like, oh, well, I'm going to go full this way. I'm going to go all in, and I'm going to get this done. Because then you start to learn what's actually important, what's not, and you get to prioritize a little bit better. So you have, like, a lot of people have to be able to go through that point anyway. And I think
you probably went through it, because you've
talked
about
absolutely
how you've changed. But like, we'll talk about that. But like, the way you do assistance stuff for powerlifting, like, you have to learn all that stuff so you can learn its value and almost overdo some of it. Because some of it, people think it's valuable, but it's like, it might not be as valuable as you think. I did
probably
it.
not. Yeah. And like, I've done it all. And like, that's one of the things that like, so like, there was a meme. We talked about this a little earlier off air, but there was that meme on social media the other day where it was like a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu purple belt standing there, and the thing was like, "Oh, you're a burnt out power lifter," and the guy goes, "Yeah, how'd you know?" It's like, because that's what everybody does now. But like, so like, I find myself fortunate that I went the opposite direction.
Yeah.
Where like I came to strength sports and powerlifting from Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, from kickboxing, and from all that stuff. And like, that's the biggest thing that like everybody talks about after getting into this like Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu or anything like that, when you've gone to something that's so out of your wheelhouse and so different, is that white belt mentality where you're a total beginner, you don't know shit, and you don't know shit about shit.
Which you don't get with powerlifting,
Which
or
you
like
don't
lifting
get
in
with
general.
powerlifting or lifting in general.
Yeah.
Because you can watch a YouTube video on how to get somebody to bench press, and all it is, it's not fucking hard. You just lower it to your chest and press it up. Right. And like, that's the thing where like, if you look at that like white belt mentality with something that's actually complicated, like martial arts or any kind of like real sport, like you have to remove your ego to get yourself to that position where you can like actually learn and be receptive of it. Otherwise, you're not going to last in the sport.
Well, you just like you were explaining to, but I've heard this story multiple times. It's like you go in, big guy, big ego, like you literally get beat by everyone, like literally everyone
everybody.
and their daughters.
Yeah.
Which is like a hard pill to swallow because you're gonna swallow it. Like there's no way around it. Like
there's no way around it. It's gonna happen. It's inevitable.
Like, and you have to take it. And some people don't want to do that, which is again the wrong answer for that particular sport. But I think that probably helps in other areas.
The best thing ever is like when I used to love watching these videos when it was like some like big bodybuilder or powerlifter would go like into like a kickboxing school. And it'd be like this 240-pound dude who's like 5% body fat. And they'd be like, you can fight our little 160-pound, like 4'8" guy over there. And this little 168-pound dude would just beat the hell out of this powerlifter or bodybuilder, just like absolutely wreck him and destroy him. The guy would land like one shot and it'd be like, okay, well, I don't even feel that. And like the little guy would just destroy this powerlifter or bodybuilder. And it's like, that's what happens, but you don't get that in any kind of like strength sport because it's you versus you. So your ego is just going to conflate the entire time or just inflate the entire time because you just feel like you're just so much bigger and better than everybody else is because you're consistently making that progress. Whereas when you're actually going against somebody else, you can realize, oh, I'm really not that good at what I thought I was that good at. Like my martial arts teacher, my karate teacher when I was younger. So I did like karate and everything when I was younger, and I trained that for 20 years. That guy, like he was my parents' instructor. He would tell people a story about when he was young, right? And he was from Japan. He was born and raised in Japan. He trained like very, very hard in Japan. And this was back in like the 50s and 60s when Japan was like serious and everything that he did was full contact fighting. This dude got to like black belt within a year and a half, which was like unheard of in Japan. He was one of the fastest dudes to ever get to that spot. His training every single day, he would run up a mountain, do 500 punches on his right hand, 500 punches on his left hand, 500 kicks on his right leg, 500 kicks on his left leg, run down the mountain, go to the school and train for like 4 or 5 hours every single day. After he got his black belt, like he had competed a bunch of times and he decided that he was going to challenge some of his full contact fighting friends. And his friends were like, okay, cool. Let's put on some kendo armor and let's go. He was like, yeah, cool. I'm going to do it. I'm going to kick these guys' asses. And he like, all he would ever say about this is like, he came out of that match and just said, I found out I wasn't as good as I thought I was. And that was it. And like, from that moment on, that changed his entire perspective and outlook on every single thing that he was looking at doing. And he realized that he was nothing. And he just needed to remove that from himself and get the ego away so he could actually work on mastering the craft that he dedicated his entire life to going up into that point.
Well, we talked about the like not that serious. Like that's like straight up like movie series, but like we had Stu and was it Ray?
Dave.
Ray. Anyways, we're talking about powerlifting, but long story short is we both played college football, and like college football in Canada is like big, but it's not really that big. Like we get full scholarship, but it's not like D1. It's nothing crazy. Mm-hmm. Even at that point, at that level, we like can see powerlifting for what it is. It's like it's not even close to that level.
Not even close.
Like, and so we know, like, having that perspective, and yours from fighting and Jeb's for fighting, it's like you kind of go into these things like, listen, this is actually not that bad. There's like 3 things you need to learn, and like you need to learn that lesson that you ain't shit. to even progress. I know it's not everyone needs to do that, because talent, you can kind of win it out, but it's like those lessons are really helpful if you want to be good at this thing, because I think a lot of people don't, and they're out real quick.
Yeah, and like those are the people that compete once, lose, never do it again. Like, this is stupid. I'm not doing this anymore because my ego is fragile and I can't take this.
Or they take a bunch of drugs and then they get.
Or they take a bunch of drugs.
Repeat that, but they're just
and then lose
stronger.
again. Yeah. And they're taking like a whole bunch of drugs, and they've still got like a 1,200 pound total. And it's like, yeah, was that worth it?
Well, there's also like, and I've said this a few times, it's like, because I came in like strength stuff through strongman, so like I feel like it's a little different, just in that you are competing against people, and you're definitely like, okay, like I'm even, you're doing similar events and stuff, but you'll be next to someone, you're racing them for a time or for numbers or whatever, but powerlifting, when it was starting to get popular, I just, there's a lot of USAPL around me, and I just thought it was goofy. Like, I coached a few people into these USAPL meets, and I went, and I remember just like going into the warm-up room in jeans and like warming up and like pulling like the max of the guys that were, in like the 220 class, just like sitting in a pair of jeans. And I'm like, I don't want to watch this. I don't want to watch this shit. I want to see some monsters do some. If I'm going to a powerlifting meet, someone better bleed out of their fucking eyeballs.
Yeah.
Like to me,
the drug.
Yeah, it's like kind of a goofy thing.
The non-tested powerlifting meets are at least a little bit better, especially like the higher points.
Yeah.
Like
those are much more fun to watch.
Because in the back room and stuff, they do all their drugs, and like then their nose is bleeding. It's like way cooler. It's still boring though, but at least you like see.
But I want to see someone like rip an ear muscle because
they were trying so hard. Yeah.
Well, and you see fights and stuff. Like there's actually like fights. Like it's actually hilarious. Like that actually is kind of cool to me. Like though. As much as we make fun of the Westside, like, oh, you gotta get dye to get on the wall. Like, to me, that's actually way cool. If we had like a documentary on the USPL.
Oh, God, it'd be the most boring thing in the world to just be a bunch of little kids that don't want to gain any weight, sitting home and watching anime and then going and benching the 1 rep max, and doing 3x8 down sets and going home.
Yeah, like, all they talk about is Wilks.
Yeah.
And high frequency this and that. And like, they literally only train these lifts. Like, it would literally be so boring.
Yeah.
Like, there's no characters in there. Like, maybe there is, but even like the I don't know, they just seem so boring.
And but like the main character would be like 5'10", 70 kilos. And it's like, I'm not going up in weight class. This is, I got to stay like this.
Maxed out like leverages and stuff. They're like
huge arch. Yep.
And we're like,
no legs, sumos.
Like Westside, they were like literally fighting over stuff, like which is like, it would be way better. I think like it's just like the reality TV. Like there's a reason why certain shows are better, because they're entertaining.
Yeah.
And like that's like the Westside versus powerlifting. I don't know. It's just like, what do you want to see? And that's how you kind of know the real shit.
Yeah.
Like you want it to be a reality TV show. Otherwise, it's boring. It's boring to watch, anyways.
And I think that's kind of where we come to like full circle when we make the jokes about like people that aren't getting bigger. Like, I mean, for me, like we talk about how we found like kind of systems, and I always talk to Dean. It was like when I met Dean, I'd known Pat for years, but like Pat to me was he was always this weird guy that was blowing up balloons in between sets and strongman, and we were all like, what the fuck is this guy doing?
What is this guy going?
I always loved him. I mean, we've been friends forever, but I was always like, he's a little off. And of course he is, but that's probably why we get along. But like, so I meet Dean, and I'm talking to Dean and Anthony a bunch, and we're like talking, and like they're kind of explaining all this like PRI shit, because I had done a couple small things with people, but I didn't understand it, and they're kind of explaining this stuff, and like just like the orientation and stuff. I was like, okay, this is funny because I've kind of come to the same conclusions, but I did it because I hurt my back. And so what I had to start doing is I switched to all bodybuilding. And basically, people made fun of machines up until like this last year. But basically
like
what
6
machines
months ago.
did, like machines basically put you in the position that your rib cage is over your pelvis.
Yeah.
And you're orientated in order to do these things, and you're stabilizing your chest, and you're stabilizing your pelvis, and you're able to utilize the actual muscles you use. So I just got really into like bodybuilding type stuff. And I was like, this is way more fun. I'm not getting hurt. And but we said it's like, came to the same conclusions, just from totally different angles.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the thing is like I was actually talking about this a little like a week or so ago. It's like we all got into the gym to do the same thing. We all want to look better, or we want to just get really strong, or both. Usually it's going to be both. Like usually we get into the gym because we felt weak at some point in our life and we want to get stronger. And we also want to look better and feel more confident in our skin. And at the same, and like, that's one of those things that a lot of these people in systems lose, is they lose that.
Yeah.
Well,
They lose that mentality where it's like, well, what are you doing any of this stuff for anymore?
I lost it real quick because my legs never grew anyways. So
Dean's strategy is just longer shorts, but then still hike them up anyway.
Yeah, pull them up around your testicles.
Like, I don't really have body image issues. Like I never did. Like I was skinny. I was like, I just wanted to get strong and like look bigger, but like my legs like never grew and they keep getting stronger. So like I literally can't have body image issues because I would have them forever.
Yeah, but like that's like you said though, you were skinny and you were kind of weak, and that's where you wanted to get stronger. And like that was exactly what happened with mine.
Actually, the pump. To be completely honest, like my lifting story was like I went to the school gym, and like this dude was like a grade above us was like doing dumbbell curls, and there was like the girls volleyball practice. You're like, yeah, let's shirts go off. Like mine didn't, but I did like a 20-pound dumbbell curl, and like I did it like for like 1 set, and my arm was just fucking exploding, and I'm like, oh my god,
this is amazing.
Like I never felt that, and it was like I was like sold. I was like, this is it. Never. I don't think it's ever been as good as that.
Like I am in.
Like
you always remember your first time. You always remember your first time.
Like I do. I literally remember like my arm is gonna be ripped off, and I'm like, yeah, like boom.
This feels good.
Just like a 20-pound curl. It's like 140.
Yeah. I mean, that was like how mine was. Like when I was in college, I ended up, this is back when I was like actively competing in kickboxing and everything. I got super sick. And I went from about 205 to like 160 at 6'3". So like I was tall and I was really, really thin. I literally like 60 pounds in 6 months. And I remember like trying to pick up an empty cardboard box when I was like living at home with my parents because I was out for the semester. Like I wasn't allowed to come back to school because I was so sick. I had mononucleosis, if anybody knows what that is.
It's like COVID.
It's basically, yeah. But so like I had really, really, really bad. My doctor said it was like one of the worst she'd seen in a while. And I tried to pick up an empty box that had like a couple things in it, and it was like really
That's
heavy.
not an empty box, dude.
Well, okay, it had a couple things. It had a couple things. It was like a milk crate.
Okay.
It had like a couple pieces of paper and like some stuff in it, but it was like very, very light, maybe weighed like 5 pounds. And I was like, this is like legitimately heavy, and I just feel really weak. And I was like, that's never going to happen to me again. I'm not going to let that be the way that I live my life. And like that's what got me into doing all the shit that I'm doing now. And like that's kind of why like I went through the systems and stuff that I've kind of gone through, is because I want to get myself to the point where, Jeb, like you were talking about, like I don't want to feel like shit, but I want to do whatever I can. I will do literally whatever I can to be as strong as humanly possible.
Yeah. And I think, having gone through, I've kind of shifted to like, I stopped caring about strength numbers. I mean, I'm 42. Like once I stopped trying to compete in anything, but that said is like before Costa Rica, I was like, you know what, fuck it. I'm going to start doing Hatfield squats because they feel right on my back. And like, so, everyone's like, oh, wow, you're doing pretty strong at these when I was doing them in the gym. And so then I like, in my mind, I'm like, I'm going to hit 500 for 5 before I leave for Costa Rica. I'm not going to tell anyone about this because it's a really fucking stupid idea, because right now I'm doing like 350 and in 6 weeks I want to hit 500, but I did it. And it was like one of those things when you have like people screaming and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot that whole part of the thing. Like bodybuilding by yourself is fun. It's cool. But like when you're in, like when I was in a strongman gym and we were lifting like real weights and it was like people fucking screaming and like the place shuts down for your PR. Like,
dumb shit happens. That's when all the,
and I forgot how fun that is.
But man, it was awesome, and that was like in that was whatever, March or end of February. And
Mike Tyson was talking about that on the Joe Rogan one, like, because they had that video like that came out when he was just like training before that fight news came out, and Joe Rogan was like, man, you look fucking sick. He's like dude, he's like, it was like 10 minutes. He's like, it was 10 minutes, like my first time going like full speed. And he's like, he's like, I forgot. He's like, I was in bed for a week with my sciatica and all this shit. But he's like, literally it fucked me up because he's like, I forgot like to be there doing that thing, like that's a skill in itself. And you turn it on, but like if you forget what it's like to live there 24/7 and you can only have 10 minutes of it. Just like, I know what it's like. I know exactly what it's like to like do dumb shit. Like, I'm going to go squat this weight, wrap my wraps tight and stuff, but it's like a whole different dimension that I don't know if I want to be in.
Yeah.
Like it's different. It's
different. Very different. You have to access an entirely different mental state to get into a point like that. And it's one that there's always there's always a cost to getting into that position and getting into that state.
Yeah. But I think
Yeah, and I don't think everyone has that state either.
Yeah.
Like, because the guys that are at the gym I was training at, like, they're all powerlifters and weightlifters, and so when I started doing that, like, they know I like work at the Bible. I talk to them and stuff, and they were all laughing afterwards. They're like, "Dude, you fucking went from like just sitting there with your headphones on, all of a sudden you were like fucking snorting and screaming and fucking cranking out reps." It's like, yeah, I keep that shit under wraps, but it's there.
Well, that was my last powerlifting meet, was like when I benched 440. But no, it was like I don't want to say a smaller meet, because like it was like nationals or whatever the fuck it was. But I remember like sitting there, like
out there.
I remember I was like, I'm in game mode. Like it just kind of turns on, and like I played the same song over and over again for fucking 2 hours, and I'm just sitting there looking around. At one point, I kind of snapped at him like, "Fuck, no one actually gives a shit about this."
Yeah.
Like, there's all the crazy dudes, and like no one really did that great.
Nobody cares.
All the people that do it, but I'm like, man, like there's no one get this amped up. Like, how are you supposed to be good at this? Like, you got to go to like a dark place.
You got to go to a dark place. And that's one of the things you were talking about earlier with like the Westside versus the World documentary. It's like those people all had the ability to get to that point on cue and on command. Like you would just watch them pacing around to the back, and like that's where it gets fun, and like that's where they have that ability to do that. And like you watch a lot of the lifters now, and like I've like every meet that I've ever gone to, it's just like a bunch of like little like Instagram nerds that are like, "Hey, do you recognize me from social media?" And it's like, I don't fucking care about you. Like I'm not here to talk to you.
Like you should be like almost like visibly like shaking. Like I don't know. Like those are the strong people anyways. Like I don't know.
Those are the strong people. Yeah. Like I remember.
Yeah, it's like my wife. She's like my wife. I remember like when I was doing strongman, she came to my first one I ever did, and then all the other ones would go, and people were like, "Oh, are you going to see Jeb?" And she's like, "No." She's like, I don't really like being around him because I don't talk. I don't talk to her. And she's like, he's fucking not very nice and fucking yells. And it's like when I'm training hard and like at the gym, I don't try to be an asshole, but my headphones are in. I'm concentrating. I'm there to do a job. And like, that's it. Like, I'm not there to have fun. I mean, it is, I guess, fun, but it's not.
The thing is, there's another level to that. They were talking about, again, we'll bring up Mike Tyson thing, but I've not even done it yet. But he was like saying, is like his dude who trained him mentally to like be a dog, do all this stuff, like hate people, blah 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 blah. Yeah. He's like, yeah, it was really good as a world champion. He's like, it ain't too good for life. And he was like, and Joe Rogan just laughs. He's like, yeah, you'd be in jail real quick. And it's funny because like he went to jail.
Yeah, he did.
Like he can't be that person. He like, literally lost it all because he couldn't function.
And that was the thing that like that was a great episode of the podcast. So, like I listened out like 3 times, but like, the thing where he talks about like having that mentality and getting himself into that spot, and that's what I talked about. Where there's a cost. Like you need to be able to control that and turn it off when you need to. Because when he talked about the one fight that he had that it was a first round knockout, and he was like, I'm still in that mode. I was still ready to go. Fight was over in 30 seconds. I went out and beat the shit out of a dude in a bar and went to jail.
Yeah.
Because I was still ready to go and I was still amped up and I couldn't shut that down. And like, that's what people need to get, is they need to be able to have it, like get into that ability. And like, that's a skill that you have to learn and develop and culture over time. You have to be able to get there, but you have to be able to get yourself out of there because you realize this is going to get bad quick.
I think it's really hard right now though, because like a lot of, like, I don't want to say it's hard, but it's hard. I think that skill's diminishing because it's staying within pockets of people that train in person.
Yeah.
Like they have like the groups of powerlifting teams. That's why the teams always put out good athletes, because they actually can have it. It's really hard to do when I go get Matt's programming, fucking going to go train in my powerlifting thing, and I'm going to be this whatever, but it's still hard to do on your own. Or even like when it's not, it has to, I don't know. I feel like it has to be an environment thing. Like
it's also like
hard to do on your own.
Like I'm the worst client for any coach because you're never going to get video of my lifts because I just can't be bothered to fucking set up a camera and video. Maybe if I had like closed circuit TV or something, but like to me that's too much of a fucking distraction. And I like it's another thing. And now that's the show.
Yeah.
Well, it totally ruins lifting. Like I don't post as much anymore, but like it totally. You get your little video and do my little deadlift set. I actually saw Matt doesn't do all. You don't post all yours, so you're not too consistent all the time.
I mean, like that's the thing. Is like I hate like, and that's one of the things is like if I'm in an off season, like I'm good. I'll post whatever I want to post. Like it doesn't matter. I'm taking like training seriously, but like not taking it overly seriously. But like as I get like into a prep, it's like really hard to like even want to post anything because I'm like. I just don't want to have that time where I have to break from that mental state to go, okay, hold on, I got to go turn on my phone and balance it and make sure the angle's right and get all this shit perfect, and make sure the lighting's good or whatever it's going to be, and film it and then fucking talk about it on social media. Like, I don't want to do that.
Well, it's been the only, like, so weirdly, not every time, but like if I know it's going to be like sketchy, I use the camera as like my Instagram video as like motivation, because I'm like, dude, if I told people
If you don't get it.
Yeah.
But it's the only way I can manufacture it, but it's still like stupid. Like, because if it doesn't, if my music, this is where it's like so stupid. Like, I got to the point where I could do it. It won't play music off my phone and videotape. So I have to put it on my Google thing, move the Google so it's loud enough for like I feel amped up. Then I have to set this up, and it's like, it's literally production to like do that. And that's where I'm like it's way easier.
Yeah, that's exactly it too. I'll never film my top sets because
So
I can't listen to my music.
Yeah.
Which is totally, I figured it out, but it's still not as loud. So it sucks.
It's not as good.
It's like this,
But at the same
Instagram
time,
lifter,
it's also
just a hard life for us, you know?
Yeah.
It's also it's the main marketing tool, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's a marketing tool. And that's, I explain that to my clients a lot when they're like, I want to get in this kind of shape or whatever. And I'm like, I was like, first of all, I don't have kids. Second of all, this is what I was like, plus me lifting and me going to the gym and me being in shape and me eating the way I do is part of my job.
Yeah.
Like, it is inextricable from the work I do with clients. It's all part of my job. And I get pretty pissed when, there's a lot of coaches out there that don't consider that. I'm like, well, whatever, fuck off.
We've talked about that a bunch of times on social media recently. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do tell. You just talk about people who don't look like they lift.
I mean, like, that's one of the things is I think, like, you got to at least practice a little bit of what you preach.
Yeah. Like, I think it's just like I talk about my deadlift every time, but like people eat. I keep bringing up other shows, but like this one show was like talking, like, you got to put your dick out on the table every once in a while so people know.
Yeah.
Even if it's not, I guess it should be true, but like people kind of filter that out. But like there has to be a little bit of that. Like, those are the people I follow. Like
they have some skin in the
game. If you weren't
game.
strong, I wouldn't follow you.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't follow Jeb if he wasn't crazy. And
if I wasn't strong, I would have a private account because I'm fucking embarrassed to be trying to coach people.
It goes back to that reality TV show. Like, no one's going to watch a bunch of weak trainers do like all the trainer shows. So like they have trainer reality shows, and like I'll try to like watch them every once in a while, just see what it's about.
That's
going
to be the most boring thing in the world.
They're usually canceled because like it's literally a bunch of fitness people that aren't good at anything. Yeah. They're good at group classes, which like no one cares about.
Nobody cares about.
No, like they want to see the stupid shit. Like it has to be like, like that's how strength sports got introduced, was like the old strongmen.
Yeah, like somebody just looking at something really heavy and going, I bet I could pick that up.
Yeah. It's just being stupid, right?
Being
like
dumb,
that's the best part about strength sports.
Like that's where you kind of define, I don't know, like I call it like sport or fitness, but like fitness like sucks. Like as much as like I get like people need to have fitness practice, it's good for exercise. Like that's like a totally separate realm from this realm that we're talking about, and it's just
very different. Yeah,
to me anyways, like that's
it's a very different thing.
Well, it's like, I'll have people sometimes be like, hey, like, oh yeah, I would love to come train with you, and I'm like, you really don't. I was like, I promise you really don't. Like, I'm not the strongest guy in the world, I'm not the biggest guy in the world, but if you come and do a fucking leg day with me, you're gonna fucking puke. You're not gonna want to move for 3 or 4 days, and you're gonna hate it. I like that. Like, I like that punishment. Like, that's fun for me.
Matt looks like he's gonna puke on his. The ones you send me that you don't post to Instagram, the slow ones. I'm just.
Oh
like,
yeah,
you're crazy.
I'm like almost dead on some of them.
I've grinded one deadlift out, like one.
But like that's
all either up or down. Like
that's another thing for me is like I've just gotten to the point where I'm learning and trusting myself to grind again. Yeah, it's great. So like I'm like I see an RPE like 8.5 single or like triple in my program, and I'm like, okay, I'm grinding the shit out of this one, and I'm gonna make it a max. Like this is going.
Like I wish I could do that.
Yeah, it's great.
Like that's why I love strongman deadlifting is because you fucking it's actually an RPE of like 32 because they're hitching it like
and they're shaking and they're like bleeding out of the eyes. It's awesome.
Mine's either like an RPE like 7 or like the one time was a 10 or a fail, and usually it's a technical fail. So it's just like deadlifting just sucks. Like I don't grind squats either. Maybe I'm just shitty. Like that's why I'm not good.
Do you grind benches ever though?
No. Well, no. But maybe that's like, I don't know, maybe that's the whole fast. I don't know. I think it's just like I'm either in or I'm out. I don't want to grind. I think I know I can't grind it, so it's just done.
In training, but let's say you were in a meet.
Yeah, I'd grind it out.
Yeah.
So that's the weird thing.
So
So,
you
actually,
can
that's not
grind
true.
it.
I've grinded out stuff in meets. So maybe
you
it's
can
just
grind it.
You just don't do it when it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
There. Yeah. It only happened a handful of times. So that's why I don't remember all. Well, I should remember all of them. It's like 5 times. 4 benches in that one deadlift in my training.
And how much did you bench again, Dean, that one time you grinded it out?
I didn't grind 440 out. That's
easy?
maybe I did actually. I definitely jumped the call though. Like I'm such a shitty powerlifter. Like I don't like to hit depth and I don't like to pause. So like I'm bouncing it or like slowly pausing every time. Like it's like I don't even try to like do the pause. I'm just gonna do my bench and it's either gonna be good or bad.
The reason I asked what Dean benched was is because every single time I posted like a story of me benching, he'll always respond to me and just go, "I benched 440 once," and I'm like,
"Well,
cool,
usually
dude,
that or
thanks."
I'll tell. I know that you want to bench 405s. So it was like I think it was Cass was like, "What are you injured?" I'm like, "Dude, he's setting it up." So
he's just making an excuse.
Like it's like that's classic powerlifting.
You don't bench 405?
I don't. But I have never touched 405 yet.
Really? Because your rep work is high as shit.
It should be. I should be up about there. But I've also like this is the strongest I've ever been because like this is the first time I've actually like given a shit about eating for size.
Yeah.
Like I kept falling into that same trap for a while of like I just want to
like I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna do it at the end of the cycle. I'm like, dude, you're not. You're gonna get like whatever. And you got.
I got 397. And I was so fucking close.
I was like, dude, you're never gonna get it.
Oh, I was so mad.
I would say in like bench really is like a lot of people are like, what do you want to do to bench more? And it's like just get bigger.
Just get bigger, dude.
Like it's so dumb how much leverage has changed with bench.
Yep. Just get bigger and you'll be fine.
I don't know. I was like, I'm pretty confident. Like the first time I hit 405, I was like, this is like, I'm good. Like I know I got more, but it was like 405 was the number because 500 is like, I know what you have to look like to get 500. I have to gain 50 pounds.
Yeah.
So it's just like the people that
but when you hit 440, I mean, technically you weren't that big, and your arms are long as shit. Like
but
that
that
good
was
range of motion too.
Yeah, but like I maybe, but it's just like I was bench specialist at that time. I basically just benched 4 times a week, and it's like the thing you need to do that is just like not worth it. There's like a few people who are good at benches and leverages, like John Hack. What's his name? The hamstring. There's like a few small guys that can do it and do leverages, and then like John Hack's kind of weird because he's just strong and
John's just a freak of nature, dude.
But like if you're not those people, you have to look a certain way. They're wide on both sides.
Yep.
And
when you talk about bouncing, those dudes just sink that thing down their chest and then
like
watching Julius Maddox like bench 775 and just like literally let it just drop into his chest fully and then blast it up. Like
I mean, it probably drops 8 inches into his fucking chest.
But they all look the same. All those top benchers that are over 500, like they literally look the same, and all of them suck at deadlifting, minus like a few people that are like top level that can hit 500, like Dan Green and stuff. But like, very few of them aren't. Like, I don't want to look like that. Like,
they can barely reach the bar. I mean, seriously. Like your belly gets in the way. Like that's the one problem is it starts to get tough to get in the bar. Like all those big guys in strongman, that's what they say when they put the suit on. It's like if you can make it to the bar, you'll get it. But like they're like a lot of times they'll miss it because they can't actually get a full grip on the bar.
Yeah. And if you bench 400, 405, like because if 500 doesn't matter, 405, like most people in even the elite level, you're good. Like you're kind of in the club.
You're strong.
Yeah. And you're also stronger than everybody in your life.
Absolutely.
And their friends. So it's like 315, like some guys can bench 315, like 405 is that next one. And then most people don't even get 500.
Well, except for that old dude that just walks around your street every once in a while and watches you lifting in your garage and goes, "Oh, what'd you put up there?" And it's like, about 405. And he's like, "Yeah, no, I used to do that for like 10 in high school." Off. Like,
there is the random old guy though. So I used to have a buddy and we took all the weights in like we were a kid, like he was a kid who lived on a farm, wrestler, football player. Took all the weights in there, and I think he was probably like 315. Put him on his bench just to see what it looked like. And his dad came and was like benched it for 3. It was like cool. And I've never seen his dad lift a weight ever. He's just one of those guys. You're like, all right, well there goes my hopes and dreams.
Like my ego is shattered.
Well, when are you gonna lift 405? It's like that's at the end. That's at this mock meet. Is that?
That's hopefully we'll see.
Man,
we'll see. I'm not going to make the excuses now, but like it's like things are going good. My bench is good. My bench is feeling strong. So like that's the goal.
It never works out like that.
It never works out like that, but we'll see what happens.
It's either that or your deadlift suffers, and so, but maybe they'll both.
Yeah.
Maybe they'll both.
Maybe they'll both be good. Well, I mean, like my squat has just been terrible for the last like year and a half. So like that's the one that's suffering right now. I'll take the bench and deadlift.
Fine. You squat so low.
Yeah.
You have to learn how to cheat.
But that's because I did martial arts for literally 20 years and I have no proprioceptive ability to stop at depth. It's either going to be ass to grass or 5 inches high every time. Those are the only 2 places that I know.
Yeah. And see, I run into bone, like literally above depth. So it's just like knee wraps can kind of.
They help you a little bit.
It's actually when I do sumo, I don't know. I'm like the worst squatter, so I'm the worst person to talk about. But like you squat really low.
I squat narrow and I squat low, and I don't squat very heavy.
You should just but the thing is now you're like already wasted all that time. You actually won't get much out of widening your stance and squatting like that. You'll be weak.
I'll be weaker
because you don't even deadlift like that.
No, I deadlift very narrow stance too.
Like, fuck. You ever sumo deadlift?
Nope.
No.
As soon as I get into a sumo position, it feels like my left hip labrum is like tearing.
Yeah.
Fuck, that sucks.
Yeah.
That's probably from the kickboxing, honestly.
That's from kickboxing. Yep.
Yeah.
Well, at least you brought your white belt mentality because like you're never going to be good at powerlifting.
I don't care. I just want
to
better than I was last week.
But there's very few people that like think that. Like they're like, no, I'm like going straight to the top.
Yeah.
Dude, the amount of people, like when I was working at the strongman gym, guys would come in and they would literally like be training for like 3 months and they'd be like, yeah, I want to go pro in strongman, or I want to like be top 5 in a powerlifting. I'm like, dude, what the fuck are you talking about? Like how the fuck do you even come in here and say something like that? Like what kind of self-awareness is that? And they were dead serious.
Yeah.
They were dead serious.
I'm not even going to compete until I can break a record. It's like, oh, yeah. Okay.
Like you mean so your first meet, you're going to bomb out. All right, cool.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. Let's talk. Let's actually like, because you're not a potato, like upstairs anyways.
Sort of.
So like we kind of had this conversation on powerlifting, but it was more or less like, so how you approach assistance lifts, essentially, I think is the kind of what we're talking about. Because you had, I would like you to explain like kind of this variability thing. Because I think what happens a lot of the times with even your guys' content, but like that whole realm of the people that follow it is like, they think they have like this idea of what variability is. And then they don't kind of apply the principles that you guys teach to like, and I know it's evolved over time. So kind of how are you approaching that? At least we can talk powerlifting, but generally like right now, how are you including that stuff?
So this is one of those things where the way that I've gone to starting to look at it is it all exists on a spectrum, and it's one of those things where we need to look at where that person happens to fall in the terms of their training cycle and how close they are to a competition if they're actively going to be competing, if we're talking about somebody who's a power lifter, or to the end date of their goal if there's somebody who has a goal of like any sort of performance metric goal, like a pull-up or like running a faster mile or whatever it's going to happen to be. We have to look at that as where they're going to fall first, because that's how we're going to decide how much variability exercise they're going to get in their training program. The further out from that, we're going to start adding in a little bit more and more variability. For me, I always keep some sort of a specific movement in there because I want them to still be able to retain the neurological skill of being able to do that movement well, right? And that's one of the things that I think happens a lot. Like I've seen a lot of lifters who will just totally discount and remove all specific movements for like months at a time. And then the first thing that happens when you go back to specificity is because you're stronger now, you have more muscle, you jack yourself up because like, okay, cool. This weight feels like I'm supposed to go for an RPE 6 single. This PR is an RPE 5. So I'm going to go up a little bit. And now I'm just like messing myself up. Like I messed my quad up like last week on an RPE like 4.5 single on a low bar back squat because it was the second time I've done a low bar back squat in a year. So like I'd high barred more than I'd been low bar squatting, and like it was a very, very, very light low bar squat. It was like 385, and I was doing pause sets of 6s with it, and like my top single was supposed to be 405, and I get down in the hole and it just goes, and it felt like I was going to pass out. Like I got really nauseous. And it was a pretty bad tweak, but it's like, that was the point where I should have definitely had some more low bar training in my training cycle before that, because I have more muscle now. I'm better at moving. but I don't have the neurological skill to be able to control that range of motion and control that position. So I think there always needs to be some degree of specificity in every single training program that exists, just for that neurological adaptation and that skill, just to retain that skill of the movement and keep that kind of fresh. But as we're like 12, 14-ish weeks out, that's where like we'll have a little bit of a little bit of variability style training in there. What we're looking to do with variability style training, I think this gets like very, very lost in the weeds, because like I was actually talking to Paul Anita about this the other day, where he's doing accessory work with me, and he was looking at it. He's like, okay, well, I don't want to get weaker and smaller.
Yeah.
It's like, well, I still want you to drive effort through all of these things. What I'm looking at doing is I'm looking at using variability training to drive joint independence, but through something that gives you a lot of effort.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So like, I don't want to replicate that same position and same patterning that you always do for your competition style movements. I want to get you out of that area so you are better able to leverage that position when you get to that position and you have to express that strength. So what I want to do is, like, if I see somebody who's got like a super arched back when they're bench pressing, I want to give them a little bit of flexion or neutral so that they have the ability to like better concentrically orient a pec, so that when they're eccentrically orienting a pec in a large range of motion, they're a little bit stronger at both ends of the range of motion. Because if you look at where people are like tearing pecs and like when on a bench, it's when they're starting to press, right? So it's when that pec is those pec fibers are starting to shorten, and it's because they always exist in that lengthened position. So as soon as they start to get into any sort of like concentric pressing and they start to shorten that range of motion, the tissue's just not adapted to it. So I'm going to look to give them some stuff that trains them the opposite position of the muscle, or the opposite end range of motion of the muscle group, so that they can actually work on building up a little bit more tissue resiliency and get better leverage in the position that they're looking for.
Well, especially I think with him, because I remember talking about it, like he was worried about load, but you're also, I think like the big thing is when we think variability, we automatically think that load is out of the window.
Yeah.
And that's also on a spectrum. Like certain exercises lend to load and some don't. And I guess it would depend on the goal, but I think that's the preconception, is that there's load is we're not using load to drive these things, where you are.
Yeah, we have to. I mean, like if we're looking at how the body is going to adapt and how the person's going to adapt to any kind of given stimulus, there has to be some sort of loading mechanism on there. Otherwise, it's just going to be low-level sensory motor noise. Mm-hmm. And that person's just going to be feeling a lot of feedback and feeling a lot of stuff. But if you have and this is one of the things we talk about in the group mentorship all the time, like if you have a 135-pound deadlift, a 90-90 hip, like hamstring hip bridge is going to do nothing for you. Like you're going to get a cognitive reference point, but that's not going to structurally change your tissue and change the orientation of your hamstrings and make you better at that position. Mm-hmm. It's going to give you the ability to think about it later when you go to do something. But like, I would much rather give you that reference point and then have you train harder through it, where you now understand what it's supposed to feel like, so you can actually make some structural change by loading it, because that's how we're going to actually get anything done, is by generating tension into those areas. But you have to have that reference point first.
Well, that's where I think it's lost. I don't want to say lost, but this idea of, I think, like, we'll just say that this kind of understanding is new. And variability is just the word we use. Other people might use other stuff, whatever. But like, I was looking at the one drill you gave Paul, where he's pushing down on the band and doing the row. Mm-hmm. Like, a lot of this stuff is new in terms of the loading mechanism of it, because you're essentially you're using principles to create exercises that you can use load, where before it was like, well, the 90-90 adductor drawback is the exercise, and you're like, well, we can still get the other thing through other stuff. It's just not created yet.
Yeah.
Or like the thought process hasn't been there with that in mind. And so it's interesting, because there's not a lot of this information out there, really.
No, there really isn't. I mean, but like, that's one of the things that I feel like when we were talking about people like identifying with systems beforehand, is systems give you a checklist where you have to do you have to follow the step-by-step process. You have to get to do mm-hmm. number 1, do number 2, do number 3 before you can get to number 10. Mm-hmm. Whereas if we're looking at this from a principle-based standpoint, and we're looking at like lifters as strong people, a lot of this stuff isn't going to work on them, because they're just creating sensory feedback, and they're not actually training anything that's going to give them a tangible result. So we have to figure out different ways that we can create better constraints that give them the ability to load that maximally while maintaining the area and maintaining the position that we want them to maintain, so they can actually train the muscle through a full range of motion in the way that we want it to be trained, so that they can get stronger and better and actually do what they need to do for it.
Yeah, I think that's the downside of using a clinical model for a strength based
clinical
program.
exercises.
But that's all of these certifications. All of them are clinical certifications that are done for rehab clients.
Even like quadruped, fucking the one they use in PRI for like to get like IOs and shit, like the tuck and stuff. That's literally like, if in the population that they're using it in, they don't even have a problem getting there. Most powerlifters have, they're kind of there, but they're using a compensation to get there. So you have to like even go further. So it's like, that's not a great exercise for it. But now I'm looking at certain things like an L-sit. Like I'm looking at some cals, like an L-sit basically does the same thing, except for it uses like your legs. Anyways, it can drive the same thing without it being this complicated quadruped, exhale, fucking reach, and do that's hard, man. And it's clinical.
That's hard, it's clinical, and it's going to have an extremely low ROI for somebody who's strong. And like, that's what I'm looking at, is like, I'm trying to find things that are going to have high return on investment for the time that they're going to be spending, that are going to make them like, quote unquote, feel better or move better, improve movement quality, while actually doing some work and not just laying down on the ground and just feeling shit for 20, 30, 40 minutes at a time.
Well, and even from a purely psychological standpoint, is if you give a big, strong guy a bunch of bullshit stuff, he's going to do it for a couple of weeks, and he's going to say, fuck it, and stop.
I'm done with this. I'm not doing it anymore. Yeah.
Well, Paul's a good example because he's a big, strong guy, and he's new to it. I think, like, would you have programmed the deficit Zercher fucking single leg things? Was that you? Or is that just his brain? Yeah.
That was me. Yeah. 100%. Because like, it's just getting him a little bit more retraction of a rib cage, just getting him to internally rotate that and reach through his elbows and protract scaps around his body, keep his rib cage and pelvis stacked, getting through a full amount of knee and hip flexion, because that's where he kind of faults. Like he faults, like as he goes down into that like mid propulsion area, he just kind of like externally rotates and abducts the femur. So like learning and like teaching him how to be able to drive his knee straight forward and pronate a foot, but he's also doing it like 135 pounds. Yeah. And it's blown his quads up, and his quads are like he's feeling a lot of work in his quads while he's going through and doing that, but he's also building structural change at the same time because of the cues that he's got and the constraints of the actual exercise and movement.
Well, I think powerlifters miss out so much because they are giant compensations, and when they start actually doing isolation work, they're like, holy shit, so these are what quads feel like.
But they do the exercise. This is where it's like the intention actually does matter, and it's not that you have to take PRI to understand the intention. And that's why, like, you guys, because even in your mentorship, you'll teach this stuff, but you're not like going full PRI potato on everything. But like, there's some principles in there that matter, like even getting the drawback if you're doing frontal plane, like the reach and rotation, blah 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 blah. But those things do matter when you're doing a Zercher squat, because I've seen like people message me and they'll be like, yo, like I saw Guido Power doing his 95 and like they're trying with 225, and like I know I was doing it wrong. I needed more feedback, but I need to like go through that system. But even the 225, they're like fully extended, they're doing the exercise, but it's a different intention, which is fine.
It's a different intention.
It's not even a bad thing the way they're doing it, but it's not the same fucking thing as variability.
Not the same at all.
You just use the old strategy for this
new
exercise.
Movement.
It looks exactly the same, which is maybe fine if that's what you want to get better at.
Yeah.
But you don't know that, that is the problem. It's like you don't know enough. Now you're not dangerous, but you could be, and you've lost it.
But you're not getting the intention of it. Like we've been doing BFR Zerchers with like.
Yeah. Oh, that's gotta be brutal,
dude. So they're BFR.
Oh, that's gotta be awful.
the last one I did was 8x8 with 30 seconds rest, and at 65 pounds. 65 pounds.
Terrible.
It felt like a part of my quads that I've never felt were tearing.
Yeah.
Like by set 4, I couldn't breathe because your blood's being occluded into your thighs almost. Yeah. It's not complete occlusion, but you're being held in your thighs. And so like all of a sudden I'm like, okay, like the intent of this really, and we're doing it for my knees. So my knees are kind of fucked up. It's actually helped.
But load is a problem. So
load is a problem.
Load is a problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So this is an area where you would do some sort of a different constraint to set you up to still maximally load it within the following constraints that you have, where you can't load it maximally. So we just cut off blood flow. So we're going to be able to load a lot less, but still have the effort be very, very high.
Yeah.
And then I go and do a bunch of leg press.
Yeah.
Because my knees feel good then.
Because they feel great.
Yeah. Which is what I guess is like, I do believe some of that stuff gets lost, even with your guys' stuff, because there's people that follow Kyle and you guys that like aren't like in your extended, like they're just kind of followers.
Yeah.
And like that's where this stuff, you guys actually do a really good job of explaining it. But like that stuff does get lost because when you play the bad game of telephone and the people that are kind of extended networks of copying this stuff, sometimes it does get lost, and then it becomes the same thing that we're essentially making fun of. And that's what, I guess that's not necessarily the danger of it. Like it's all kind of good, but I wish that methodology would kind of go through. And I guess that's what your mentorship's for.
That's what it's for.
Not to push, not to push your shit, but like, I mean, the people coming out of the mentorship understand
they get a better understanding. And like, that's actually, I was actually talking to Paul again about this yesterday. And like, we're kind of getting to the point where we figured out that there's probably about 5 coaches in the world that are indirectly responsible for coaching every single athlete out there.
Yeah.
Because like, I put some people through the shit that I make them do, and then I see like all of their clients are just posting all that same stuff. I'm like, bro, you didn't even know how to do this shit until yesterday. Like that was like, you did it for the first time yesterday. Now all of your fucking people are going to do it.
I have seen that.
Yeah.
It's awesome.
But like, it's not even a bad thing.
It's awesome, but it's also like, hey, maybe take a few weeks and run through this yourself.
I mean, it's awesome sarcastically because I'm sitting there going like, oh, you've done this one time in your life. You have no understanding about why I'm choosing this particular movement for you. You don't even know what it's supposed to feel like. This person's doing it wrong, so you clearly don't even know how to cue it. It just looks cool and it looks trendy on social media, so you're going to just post, like, get people to repost
Well,
it.
it's actually a lot harder than it looks. Like, I've taken a lot of the same shit, but I was like asking a stupid question. I was like, this propulsion, like fucking whatever, my arm, internal rotation, how do I get in this? You're like, why don't you just look at the position of the joint in that thing? And I'm like, like I have to think, but like, I know I should do that, and I still want to just do the fucking exercise. But like, it's not helpful for understanding wise if you just do it, because like. But then it got me going. I was like, oh, I'll just do a side plank. But then I'm like thinking, it's not in the side plank. It's like the purpose is to do it. I'm like, oh, that's why side planks were probably created by someone who actually knew what the fuck was going on. And then it turned into just fucking a side plank that's shitty.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, and again, I get it now, even though like I knew that, but like it made sense when I was like, I had to actually think through it, because I like, it was just like, fuck, I get it now.
Yeah.
So when we talk about like how bodybuilders kind of, before the science, they're always ahead of the curve, and it's like
they're still ahead of the curve.
Yeah, and you talk about people. People want to go into all these like biomechanical things of like, okay, we need to work on your scapula, and it's like, I'll go in a machine and I'll be like, okay, as long as I know the intent of my exercise, like, okay, we're trying to hit lower lats here. Like, okay, I don't really have what I was going to use, but like, hey, okay, let me rig this. I'm going to start light and be like, okay, cool. I'm hitting lower lats. My plane, the range of motion is good. The plane is proper. Like, I'll just stand here, put a knee here, and boom, all of a sudden I've got what I need.
Yeah.
I think this all comes full circle to the lack of critical thinking, is people want to just mimic what they see instead of being like, if you understand the intent and you understand what your desired outcome is, you can probably fill in the gaps in there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. And like, that's exactly why the first thing that I said when we kind of started recording was that critical thinking is dead.
Yeah.
Is because everybody just looks at it and mimics exactly what other people do on social media. Because right now, the way that social media is going is, the more that I'm able to mimic something, the more likes I'm going to get from that same person's network. And that person might end up noticing me and thinking that I'm doing really cool stuff and give me a compliment. So they're trying to feed my ego through the fact that I've done something that this person has done now, instead of actually looking and critically thinking and like shooting me a DM and going like, hey, why are you doing this exercise?
Yeah.
It's just
like, your Dean always comes out with the thing of like, and then all you are is just a shitty version of that person.
Yeah, exactly. And like, I'm already a shitty version of myself, so you don't want to be a shittier version of me. Like, that's not a good thing to look for.
Well, it's exactly what it is. And it's just like, I don't know. It just like, that's why I need to feel stuff and be super shitty at it to realize how shitty I am at it and how far I have to go. Because even at this point, like, I've been more or less out of the training game. I have a few people here and there, but it's just like how fast you could become shitty at it.
Yeah.
And then the new stuff comes out, and that's what I mean. The new stuff is the old stuff. It's just kind of different, but like, you got to stay up on it. And like, it's not as easy as just learning. Like, it's like years. Like, the thing is, like, you'll see your exercises and Kyle's a good example, because Kyle posts a lot of stuff and he has a system, but that's years and years and years and years of pretty much a lot of the same information for a lot of those years. And now it's kind of distilled to this thing. It's like, it's going to be really hard to get there. And like, it's not to say don't do it. It's just like, it's not that simple, even though like there's a product and like these things will help, but you need to learn a few things first.
Yeah, you got to get some like prerequisites done before any of this even starts to make sense to you. And like that's one of the things that I've had. Like I've picked up a client through social media who has just been following Kyle and myself for a while, and has been like, I've done everything that I've done. I've tried to like copy everything that you guys are doing, and it's making all my issues worse. And it's like, okay, well, it's because you present as a totally different case than I present as and he presents as. So of course it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't work for you because you're a different person.
And it's hard to explain that in Instagram. And that's where it's just like funny, because like we talk in arguments and like you kind of go on other people's posts, and then the real shit comes out. I think actually in arguments, the real stuff actually comes out. So if you want to learn about this stuff, go look at when Matt argues with Strong or whatever, Squat University.
Yeah.
But it's hard to do it in like a version of Instagram where it's like the small little video and the small caption. It's like, it's so much deeper than that. And like,
and that's where I think like the way that it's kind of going now with like these pain science people who are talking about pain being all in your head and all the stuff being in your head, like they're partially correct.
Yeah.
Right.
They're
Absolutely.
partially right. But then like you look at the stuff and like these are the same people that look at like compensatory strategies and they go like, well, you're just weak.
Yeah.
And we're just going to avoid that movement until you get stronger. It's like, okay, but then you go and train like a jackass and don't understand how any of this stuff actually works.
The whole point of the pain science being in your brain, I've kind of been going through this because I think I told you, it's like, I'm pretty sure a lot of my knee pain's in my head, but I won't go there because it's in my head and I've been blocking for so long. But I need to go there so that I know what good and bad is. Because if you still do bad, you're still going to fucking hurt because it started somewhere.
Yeah.
So you need to know where good and bad is, but if you won't push to bad, you can't get to good. It's like, that's the pain science part, but like it is both. That's where even we had Joel Seedman on. Fuck, I still get flack for that podcast sometimes. But he had that one that was like all biomechanical. And then the pain science people got crazy. I'm like, you guys are both fucking wrong.
Yeah, you guys are both wrong.
Like, and Joel probably has it more right because at least he teaches them how to fucking do the thing. Like, like it's
and like it's the thing is like a lot of the pain science people just totally discount all biomechanics at all.
Yeah,
right.
Like you can't say that these things don't exist.
Yeah,
when
like
you can watch somebody do it, it's not fake. Like this is not a fake thing that people are just like, oh well, like my hip shift is all because I think I have a hip shift. It's like, no, like I have some limitations that create and cause a hip shift and that I need to train and get better at. And like they're partially right with the fact that like you're weak in that position, but then they don't do anything to address it and make you stronger in that position that gets you to fix it.
Which is where like that's what I mean. Like then that's where the clinical model thing. That's why I like the way like people in our extended network do stuff is because they still train. Like they kind of take a bit of that quality and learn how to train. Obviously, it's not going to fix everything. Like there's some people with fucked up problems that they probably should go to the medical model. Mm-hmm. And like I even have buddies that know both systems and are chiropractors or whatever, and they'll be like, "Listen, there is people that need they're clinical. They're fucking clinical. Like they do need that. And it's not just about strength, but a lot of people can just get better by smart exercise selection. You can call it variability or whatever.
Yeah.
Using your brain to like fix this thing. Or not even fix it, just get stronger in a different way than what you thought, essentially.
Because there's a lot of us, you know, I think all of us on this call are included, we're not going to stop training no matter what anyone tells us. So we better find a way to do it. Because, you know, that's what I said during COVID. I have my private studio, and that's part of why we're moving is, you know, if something like that happens again, like I want to have my garage gym because, you know, if I can't train like that, and it's sad, but like if I can't train for 6 months, like it's going to be a bad time for everyone around me.
Yeah. I don't know. Like all of us have home gyms. We probably like, I don't know what would have happened. Like I know Kyle ended up training at some point, but he was doing fucking driveway workouts with.
Kyle probably did 40,000 kettlebell front squats over the whole shutdown thing. It was amazing.
Like I'm sure even he was like, "Fuck," like because like that's like training is important. So that's kind of
it's important, yeah.
Oh, I don't know. I don't even know who we're mad at this point. Like these people even exist, but they do exist because like there was actually Jeb gave me this articles on PTDC. It's like fucking, well, like squatting and stuff, and basically Lucy Hendricks goes in and like just goes off. Yeah. And then this other guy goes off who's like a crazy like pain science guy, and it was like some people aren't biomechanically built to squat, it's all in their fucking head and all this stuff. Then some other dude goes on, and I was just like, fuck, I hate
his comments. I mean, this guy's talking about bone blocks that mean that under no circumstance could you ever get into a squat, and I'm like, I think you're probably reading a little too far into this, pal.
Yeah,
But
you're
I was
talking
like-
about like one person.
Yeah, but this
even-
guy, he's like this. He's one of these. He's a Looney Tune, and this guy's made some nutrition comments on there, and I'm like, do you? I mean, I know you're in another country, but are you sure you actually fucking read anything ever about anything? Because like.
But that's what the internet is, and that's what
That's
I was
all
like,
it is.
fuck, I keep forgetting, like, people still argue about squatting, and like in some form or fashion, like we're hinging squat. I think there's another argument about squatting, but I'm like, Jesus Christ. I'm like,
Let's talk about getting lost in the minutiae of shit that probably doesn't matter for 90. Like, if you want to argue with other professionals to like gain followers or whatever, like I think the squat you arguments you guys had were totally actually beneficial. Like I think something came out of that, and it was good branding, I think, as well. But like some of these people, first of all, if you can't fucking squat any weight, get the fuck out of the conversation.
Yeah.
And second of all, if on the other hand, if you are an amazing geared power lifter and you're going to come in and try to do the argument, it's probably like, let's see, if that's the argument you have. But like, otherwise it's like, and it's a trainer who coaches moms out in the suburbs. Like, what do you fucking care? Like, set people up for success and go from there.
there's a reason.
Yeah,
why
like
you
how many
make
times are
money.
you gonna make them do a barbell back squat like a suburban soccer mom? Like never
Why?
ever. So why do you even
Why?
care about this? Yeah. And like that's one of the other things that you brought up too is like that like a phenomenal geared power lifter, they're gonna present with everything different because their stance is so different because the gear changes the entire mechanics of the movement itself.
Right.
But it's like you watch these these guys that bench like 1,100 pounds in these bench shirts, their lockout and their sticking point is at lockout because the shirt has done so much work off the chest.
Yeah.
So it's like that just is a totally different movement. And that's why when people look at the Westside training where you're doing all this banded and chain stuff, it makes sense because that's where you're going to fail. So you need to overload and get hard and make it more difficult at the top where it's like that doesn't really carry over to a raw lifter because it's just different.
Yeah. Because he fails 3 inches off the chest.
3 inches off the chest. Yeah. So I don't need to make it super difficult at the top. Like maybe that'll help me because I'll just start like overload a little bit of tissue and I'll maybe get a little bit more like work in the concentric orientation of these fibers and maybe work and overload them a little bit more, which may have an indirect carryover. But at the same point, you're probably just going to get more carryover by narrowing up your grip and benching more. Yeah.
We had this conversation actually over DMs a while back about just like that difference of seeing the great, the really great benchers, how they actually have a rather narrow grip. They're not, overly arched. They're, internally rotating on the way up. It was like a totally different movement from what you think of like the, typical bench.
Yeah. But I mean, that's the thing is you look at the way that it's going now, and it's just a bunch of kids that don't want to get bigger who are trying to leverage their way to victory as opposed to like actually putting on some muscle. Yeah.
I was going to say, it's kind of like, I don't know if it's sad. I don't know what the product of it is, but like we're having arguments about Westside versus not Westside. Those arguments are kind of happening less and less and less because less people even know what the fuck Westside is.
They don't even know what Westside is anymore. Yeah.
Even have a conversation about you don't know Westside. Like we can't even get to the point because they literally don't know Westside and they're not even getting in the argument about not knowing Westside because they're like, what the fuck is Westside?
Yeah.
It's like, it's kind of sucks because like, I think like, I don't think people will get weaker because I think there's enough, but as a whole, I think people are getting weaker, but maybe they're not. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe
I don't know. Like when you guys, so like when I started getting into lifting, it was like the guys who kind of mentored me were all guys that really, and whether they were sports guys or whatever, they all came out of like the Louis camp. I mean, they were all doing, some kind of dynamic work, some kind of, max effort, so that was like, regardless of what kind of training you were doing, they were building almost off this conjugate method. So like, to me, that was like, that's what you did. And then things started to shift a little bit. And then obviously started getting to like Mike Boyle stuff. But, and you have each level. Then now I interact with a lot of people who came up under, straight Poliquin. And they hold on to some very interesting, ideas.
That's a good way of putting it.
So like everyone has their things and we all have our little biases because like when you first get into something, you're going to grab onto that stuff. So like, for me, like I'm always going to have chains in my gym, whether I use them or not, just because like that was the thing that like we used and it was so cool.
But they're also super cool. They sound awesome and they make you look like a badass. So I mean, who cares? Like
there's part of me that thinks it's like over. Like maybe that's like the whole generational thing, but it's just like I was brought up through DeFranco's. Like that's what I thought was cool, but like obviously that
but
was.
DeFranco was like a Louis guy.
Yeah, he was a
But
Louis guy.
But like I think like I don't think it's gonna. I think it's gone. Like I think it's starting to be gone, and then I don't think I like the new version of the Pokemon stuff.
Yeah.
In the anime. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's still like some remnants, but it seems like powerlifting is like less popular.
Dude, I posted about that the other day. I was like 2 months ago. I was like, why are so many of these powerlifters into anime? And I can't tell you how much flack I got for that post.
It's so true, though. I don't care what everyone says because like
so many people were
is
angry.
Bigger than non-tested at this point.
Yeah.
Like, I think so. Like maybe I'm wrong. Maybe that's what my Instagram feed is. But like powerlifting kind of grew.
It got huge.
But it got huge with the tested population, which is, I think they're two different sports. And so the culture is untested, which is like, you're going to lose the tattoos. You're going to lose the fucking craziness. You're going to lose the drugs. You don't
have that flame beanie.
No one wants to die to lift. Like it's like literally kind of a watered down version, which is fine. It's just like a balanced. Yeah, I don't know. I think it's gone, man. Maybe someone will like research.
I feel a little bit lost because I have never seen Dragon Ball Z. I don't actually know what it is.
Yeah.
Well,
but yeah,
I like both, but it's like the weird thing to me is like the Pokemon thing. It's like I get Pokemon. I grew up with Pokemon, but like it's like the Pokemon trainer thing is like totally lost on me.
Yeah, I don't get a lot of stuff.
Yeah. I haven't even heard the people. I mean, I saw like a Pokemon show once when I was like my brother was watching.
I think the big thing is within. I don't know if it's just the USP. Anyways, a lot of the tested, they're just like all love fucking Pokemon, which is just like you can love Pokemon, but you have to love something that's like a little crazy. Otherwise, like it's just kind of I don't know. It's changed, man.
Yeah.
And maybe we're the losers. Like they're gonna be like, these fucking guys think they're so crazy. We're crazy. And maybe
it's probably exactly what they're gonna say. But again, like they're right in their way of looking at that too.
Like, I don't want to know what that looks like though. Yeah. Maybe they'll be stronger. Maybe I'm the stupid one. Like the Pokemon trainers are like evolving.
But I think it's a difference in viewing what's important too. Like to them, you know, it's like I have friends that are really into like kind of like body weight gymnasticy stuff, and it's cool. It's not my thing. But like to them, their idea of what's best is like this relative strength. And I'm like, I was like, there's weight classes in sports for a reason. The big guy, like put a heavyweight fighter against a, you know, like Henry Cejudo or one of these other manlets. Like, I don't care how good they are. A shitty heavyweight is going to just destroy them. Like,
you put Stipe against Demetrius Johnson, like Stipe's going to murder him. Like, it's not going to matter.
Yeah. I mean, you could put the 52nd rated heavyweight against Demetrius and he's going to murder him. I mean, it's just, it's the rule of the jungle.
Yeah. But again, like that falls into, but that falls into the situation where like everybody is right in their own way because it's what fits them the best. And like, that's why all of this shit exists is because like I hate Olympic lifting and I'm not like good at bodybuilding. So like, it's just not my thing. But like, that doesn't mean that people who are bodybuilding are wrong because they choose to do that. That doesn't mean that I'm wrong because I choose to do powerlifting. That doesn't mean marathoners are wrong because they choose to do marathoning. It's just what they gravitate towards because it fits and conforms within the thing that they feel is the best for them.
Is Squat University wrong?
Squat University is so like that's a different scenario because like what we're looking at things that are based off of an outdated model that literally hasn't been updated since like 2007 when FMS and everything came out. So like we're just looking at that. Like I think it's wrong and like unethical to do because it's one of those things that has not evolved under further research and under things that have changed and said that this stuff is not correct. That's why I would say that that's wrong.
Yeah, they're done. They
But outside of our network, like, you know, I go to some of these fitness conferences and stuff, and I remember texting Dean from the last one I was at and just like being like, there's a good chance I'm going to fucking burn this building down.
Yeah.
Because this dog shit is from 2006 and it's like very popular people spreading absolute dog shit training advice to all these guys who are like, and I'm like, listen, these guys are fucking marketers. They're not trainers.
Yeah.
Like they're selling, like this is bullshit. Strong. Like, this guy's trying to tell you the only way to get lats in a pull-up is to fucking get T-spine extension. I'm like, that's literally the opposite of what you should be doing.
Yeah. It's bad. I mean, like, that's the thing is like, fitness is such a young field and like people that are trying to get smart in fitness is so new. that like we're still as an industry, we're still going through all those growing pains where it's like we're in the rebellious teenager stage where all of us are doing a bunch of dumb shit. Parents are sitting there going, what the fuck are you guys doing? And like nobody's making any smart decisions, and nobody's doing the right thing. Like I can say that for myself too. It's like I feel like I do things right a lot of the times, but I fuck up all the time. And like at least unlike a lot of the other people, like I'll admit that I fucked up. I know that I fucked up, and I'm going to try to learn from that mistake. Whereas it's like you talked about with those people at the fitness conferences, where it's like I've been doing the same thing since 2006, and like I read a bunch of new research that says all my stuff is wrong, but I'm going to fucking hold on to that anyway. It's like it doesn't make any sense. We're such an infantile field compared to anything else that people just aren't ready to grow yet or do anything else or get out of that area.
Well, yeah, 15 years ago, all the dudes that you're talking about, and I don't train anyone, so I don't put myself in the circle in that sense, but all the people in that kind of circle would have been going to universities or working with sports teams.
Yeah.
And now they're in the more public general field.
Yeah, because they realize that they're not making money.
Well, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But it's great because it's elevating. I think it's elevating the field.
It's making it more accessible to more people, which is a good thing. I would say overall is like there's probably more people that are into some sort of, and like that was one of the cool things about the whole shutdown is like I have a lot of friends who do not train and who do not exercise. And all of them were kind of participating in some kind of push-up or step challenge or doing something over the pandemic because they were all bored as fuck. And I think that's one of the good things about social media is it's making it more accessible to a lot more people.
Yeah. Basically barbells.
And strength coaches.
Every problem leads to barbells.
Yeah. See that? I mean, I remember talking shit on barbells early on and getting shit on.
Yeah.
Absolutely shit on.
That's the thing about lifting's fake, dude.
Yeah. It's all made up.
It's like actually all sports are made up, but at least
they're all made up.
Like,
but the fact that you're like people say like a deadlift has to happen from this reason, which is a completely arbitrary spot on the floor where a plate happens to have a hole in it that you can put a like. It's like, well, what the fuck? And like everyone thinks like they take the barbell and then try to build biomechanics around that instead of the body and then
instead of the human body itself. Yep.
Where before we wrap up, where are you with the Ripito thing? Was the last podcast we talked about. You still hate Ripito? Has he commented on anything?
He hasn't commented. I think he's blocked me on social media. I got blocked by. I've been blocked by John Rusin. I've been blocked by Starting Strength. I've been blocked by a couple people at this point now, where they're just like.
Did Squat University block you yet?
No, they haven't blocked me yet. But I've DM'd him a bunch of times, and he hasn't even.
Dude, he hasn't seen
one of them.
He has a million followers.
Rusin's going to do 5 top reasons that Domney's a dickhead.
He hates me. Yeah.
Dude, Squat University, can you imagine? Like, even just, it'd be hard really not to change your stuff because you get 1,000 stupid messages a day. Like, dude, my knee hurts and my pain during my squat when I videoed it. Like,
but I mean, like I have like 4,000 followers, and I get a ton of those a day.
Yeah.
Like I posted one about like pause deadlifts the other day, and like I got like literally 8 people who shot me a DM. They're like, "Hey, can you check my pause deadlift form?" I'm like, "No."
Like I'll do consultations. I'm glad.
He's getting over it. Like even I messaged him. He's like, "Dude, think it for yourself." And I was just like, I knew. I was like, I bet he got a bunch of messages. I was just like, I'm gonna message Matt to see what he fucking says. And I was just like, oh man.
No, Dean, it's because you're a smart person, and like if you want to, like this is the way that I've always tried to teach people how to do things is like. I've always hated when people just give you the answer as opposed to leading you to the answers and like leading you to the answer that you're going to come up with on your own. No, whereas like if I tell you how to do something, you have no ownership over that.
No,
none, because you now know. But you now know that I'm the guy that's going to give you the answer. So if you have another problem, you're going to come back to me. And it's kind of like we talked about in the beginning, where we're building a tribe versus building a bunch of cronies. Yeah. Like, I don't want to be your fucking guru. I want to be your Sherpa that gets you to where you want to go on your own.
Yeah. So you're a Sherpa then? That's what we should call the episode.
Call the Sherpa.
it's like, it should be like guru and then star Sherpa.
Yeah. But
like
and then potato.
And then potato.
Actually, like, we'll X out all that stuff.
Yeah. But like that's what I want. But like that's what I want to do with like whenever I get people who like are in the group or anything in the mentorship or anything or like training with me or anything like that. Whenever they ask me questions, I'm going to get them to try to get to their own answer for themselves by asking them questions that lead them to the answer so they can think about it on their own.
Oh yeah, because like even if I look at the process, dude, like I think about all the hours and years I put into learning this shit. It's just like I feel bad because I wouldn't wish that upon anyone.
Yeah. Yeah.
And going through some of these courses, it's like literally like the worst. Like you think about any of the PRI stuff, the PRI courses are the worst.
They're terrible.
Like
having those moments too, though, of like where you're like, I know what I'm doing. I'm kind of cool. I've got this career. This is great. And then there's that moment when the shit hits and you're like, I've been doing everything in my life completely fucking wrong.
Yeah.
Everything. Now I have to reassess.
At least maybe that's what we end with is like, so where do people find out about your mentorship? Not that we're trying to push your mentorship, but I think like in terms of finding a lot of this information, you guys are the only ones I trust send to that I know people will be Sherpa'd or whatever the fuck you want to call it.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So on Instagram, I am Matt Domney. So it's MattDomney. And our website is compoundperformance.com. And that's where we host all of our stuff. If you go on our bio page quickly, you'll see that our bio right now, it says Kyle is skinny and Matt is fat.
Yeah, I just saw that.
I saw that.
We were told that we had to update and put like our team page together because we hired a couple new staff members, and like Kyle and I were like, I don't really want to put a bio up there, put anything serious, so we just fucked around a little bit and keep it
like,
authentic.
What would your bio say? It's like, listen, I live at home, I play video games, and
yeah, I have a garage gym, I play video games, I train people out of my house, and I work on my computer. Like I live within a 400 square foot area of my house. Like
you have upgraded though, like you don't have the gamer headset anymore. You have
no, I got a new one. I got a new one. Yeah.
It's but then you have to adjust the volume on your mic now.
Yeah.
Cool, buddy. Well, I'm going to end everything. Do you have anything to say?
Nope, that was great, man. Thank you.
Thanks for having me on, guys.
That's right. I have wrestled with an alligator. I done tussled with a whale. I done handcuffed lightning, throw thunder in jail.
You can't stop me.
I'm going to win. It ain't about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you can get hit and keep moving forward. How much you can take and keep moving forward.
I won't quit.
I'll just keep getting stronger.
Stronger?
Stronger. Stronger.